A woman opens her mailbox in a small Ohio town and finds a letter with no return address. It knows what she did last week. It knows what her children look like walking home from school. A man leaves a review on Amazon for a folding shovel. He writes that it's useful for when you have to hide the bodies and you left the full-size shovel at home. 31 people find the review helpful. Nobody calls the police. And in the Norwegian valley called Death Valley, hikers find a woman who has been burned. Every label has been cut out of her clothing. The markings have been scraped off her cosmetics. She has been traveling Europe under at least 8 different names, and 56 years later, we still don't know a single true thing about her. Not where she was born, not what she was called, not what she was doing there. Three cases, 3 different decades, 3 sets of investigators who did everything right, and still ended up staring at evidence that refused to add up. One of them ends with a letter arriving from a man who was locked in solitary confinement. I'm going to tell you all 3. Stay with me, because the third one is the one that will keep you up. Friction Point, Circleville, Ohio, about 14,000 people, south of Columbus. The kind of town that's known for its annual pumpkin show, where the whole community turns out for a parade and the world's largest pumpkin pie. In 1976, the letters started. The first ones went to a school bus driver named Mary Gillespie. No return address, postmarked Columbus. Written in block capitals, hard, angry, jagged letters, pressed into the page. The letter accused Mary of having an affair with the superintendent of the local school district, Gordon Massey. It said her house was being watched. It said her children were being watched. And it said that if the affair didn't stop, something terrible was going to happen. Mary kept it to herself. Then her husband Ron started getting them too. And it didn't stop with the Gillespies. Over the years that followed, the letters spread. School officials, law enforcement, business owners, ordinary residents who had never done anything to anyone. Estimates range from hundreds of letters to well over 1,000. Nobody has a definitive count, because for a long time, people were too ashamed to admit they'd received one. Because the letters knew things. Affairs, financial trouble, petty local corruption. Things you would only know if you were inside someone's life. Imagine that for a second. Imagine living in a town of 14,000 people where somebody, possibly somebody you say good morning to, is writing down your secrets and mailing them to your neighbors. You don't know who. You don't know how they found out. You just know that every day, the mail comes. And this is the part I want you to sit with, because I'm curious what you'd do. If a letter like that showed up in your mailbox, would you call the police? Or would you burn it and hope it was the only one? Tell me down in the comments. August 19th, 1977. Ron Gillespie gets a phone call at home. We don't know who is on the other end. What we know is what his children saw. Ron got off the phone, took his handgun, and told them he knew who the letter writer was. Then he got in his pickup truck and drove off into the night to confront them. He never came home. Ron's truck was found crashed into a tree on a rural road. Ron was dead, and 1 round had been discharged from his gun. The sheriff's first instinct was that this was foul play, but the death was officially ruled an accident, based on a blood alcohol level reported to be roughly twice the legal limit. And here's what nobody could explain. That round from Ron's gun, did it fire before the crash? During it? After? To this day, that's disputed. No shell casing or ballistic finding was ever made public that settles it. Then the letter writer sent a letter accusing the sheriff of covering it up. For 6 more years, the letters kept coming. Then, on February 7th, 1983, Mary Gillespie was driving her empty school bus down a rural road when she saw a hand-painted sign nailed to a roadside fence. It was about her. She'd had enough. She stopped the bus. She walked over and grabbed the sign to tear it down. Behind the sign was a small box. Inside the box was a loaded .25 caliber handgun, rigged with twine, positioned so that pulling on that sign should have fired it directly at whoever was standing in front of it. It malfunctioned. It didn't go off. Mary Gillespie is alive today because a homemade device built by an amateur didn't work the way it was supposed to. Whoever built the trap made one mistake. They filed the serial number off the gun, but not deeply enough. Investigators restored it. The gun was traced to a man named Paul Freshour, Mary's former brother-in-law, recently and bitterly divorced from Mary's sister Karen. Paul told police his gun had been stolen out of his garage weeks earlier. Nobody believed him. Investigators had him sit down and copy out one of the Circleville letters in his own hand, a technique that has been heavily criticized ever since. 2 document examiners testified that the letters could match his handwriting. Could. There were no fingerprints tying him to the gun, no physical evidence tying him to a single one of the letters. Paul was charged with the attempted murder of Mary Gillespie. In October 1983, he was convicted. 7 to 25 years. And then something happened that this case has never recovered from. The letters kept coming. Same block capitals, same tone, same rage. Still postmarked Columbus. The warden put Paul in solitary confinement, twice, and ran full investigations to catch him mailing letters. The warden's conclusion? Paul Freshour could not be the one sending them. He was in solitary. The letters kept coming, and then one of the letters arrived, addressed to Paul himself, in prison. It taunted him. And it said, and I want to be precise, that they had told the authorities he didn't do it, that he wasn't going to get out of there, that he didn't do it. Either Paul Freshour was the writer and he was orchestrating letters from inside, or he sat in prison for a decade while the real writer walked around Circleville enjoying it. Which one do you land on? Put it in the comments. In the 2020s, the case was reopened on television. A CBS 48 Hours investigation brought in former FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole. Her behavioral profile raised a point that reframes the whole thing. The booby trap may have been set by someone else entirely. 1. Paul did it and got letters out through an accomplice. Points in favor? The gun was his, and the letters stopped when he was released. Points against? The warden concluded he wasn't writing them. 2. Paul was framed. A bitter divorce gave Karen motive and access. There is no direct forensic evidence tying Karen or any official to the letters. It is a theory. 3. There was never one writer. One person started it, and as the campaign gained power, others in town fed it information or wrote their own, a kind of open source harassment engine. 4. Someone inside the postal system or law enforcement. Someone who understood postmark routing and had access to information ordinary citizens don't. No such suspect has ever been publicly named.
It took nearly 20 years, but in 1994, the Circleville letters abruptly stopped when Paul Freshour was released from prison. Did people, when he got out, still think he was the letter writer?
Yeah. He was very hurt, and he was hurt with what it did to his family.
A very uncivil war had been raging for years between Paul Freshour and his ex-wife, Karen Sue. Even their 2 daughters were divided over their dad, and caught in the middle was their son, Mark.
He was so loyal to his mom, but he loved his dad too. But with Sue, you were gonna be her son or his son.
Pam Stanton says Mark chose his mom and never once visited his father in prison.
He wouldn't tell me why, he just said he couldn't.
It was Paul Freshour's gun discovered in the booby trap that helped land him behind bars.
He did tell some people that the gun had been stolen.
According to Martin Yant, Freshour strongly suspected that the thief was his own son.
And I did interview one man that said he specifically told him that he thought it was Mark, the son.
And this was before there was any talk of a booby trap.
Before the booby trap.
Freshour kept his suspicions about his son to himself, says Yant.
Family loyalty meant more to him, even though his son had totally rejected him.
Why didn't he say more? Why didn't he point the finger at his son?
Paul? Get his son in trouble? Oh, no. Uncle Paul never done that.
But he knew he would.
No.
He could go to prison.
I don't care. Uncle Paul would have died before he'd have seen Mark go to jail. All this destroyed Mark. The divorce, the letters, it all destroyed him in a way that could never be fixed.
Just before sunrise on September 11, 2002, in Portsmouth, Ohio, a man's body was found floating in the Scioto River. It was 39-year-old Mark Freshour. He had shot himself. His mother, Karen Sue, later told police her son had suffered for years from depression.
And I firmly believe when Mark took his life, he could not deal with the guilt any longer.
If Paul Freshour actually had nothing to do with the booby trap, is it also possible he had nothing to do with the letters?
As he told me, I didn't write the letters. I didn't do this.
Cases like Circleville stay alive for exactly one reason. People keep talking about them. If this case has its hooks in you, like the video. Subscribe if you want the next one. Keep the light on them. Alright, Ohio in the 70s was a town that couldn't see the threat. This next one is the opposite problem. This one, everybody could see. It was posted publicly on one of the largest websites on Earth. In 2015, a customer with the Amazon username me, display name Todd Kohlhepp, is leaving product reviews. He's a real estate broker, successful, talkative, confident, the kind of guy who closes. On a folding shovel, he writes that you should keep it in the car for when you have to hide the bodies and you left the full-size shovel at home. 31 people find the review helpful. Nobody calls the police. On a tactical knife, he hasn't stabbed anyone yet, but he's keeping the dream alive, and when he does, it'll be with a quality tool like this one. Every one of those reviews was a description of things he owned and things he intended to do. Quick one, and I want an honest answer in the comments. If you had scrolled past that shovel review in 2015, would you have reported it? Be honest, because I don't think I would have. That is the single most disturbing thing about this case. Todd Kohlhepp owned about 95.5 acres of rural land near Woodruff, South Carolina. He would later refer to it, himself, as his killing field. In late August 2016, a woman named Kayla Brown and her boyfriend, Charlie Carver, went missing. They had gone out to Kohlhepp's property to do work. On November 3rd, 2016, investigators searched the property, and they heard banging. It was coming from inside a metal shipping container. They opened it. Kayla Brown was inside, chained by the neck, alive. She had been in there for 2 months. Kayla told the officers that Kohlhepp had shot and killed Charlie Carver. Investigators kept digging. They found 2 more bodies. And then Kohlhepp confessed to a 2003 quadruple homicide. 7 victims, confirmed. He wasn't hiding. Todd Kohlhepp was a registered offender who became a licensed real estate broker and started handing his business card to strangers who wanted to see a house. The twist. Go back to January 14th, 2015. Kohlhepp's Amazon account reviews a set of padlocks, and he writes, "Now my locks have locks." And then he writes, "The place is Hotel California now." He wrote that about the shipping container. After Charlie and Kayla disappeared, Charlie's Facebook account started posting strange updates, memes. It is the strong belief of investigators that these posts were him, taunting the families of the people he had taken. Todd Kohlhepp will die in prison.
This chilling case of kidnapping and perhaps much more.
After more than 2 months in captivity, the final 10 minutes may have been the longest for Kayla Brown. Investigators painstakingly cut through this locked shipping container after hearing her screams.
Watch out, y'all move.
Prosecutors just released this video taken last November in the case of confessed serial killer Todd Kohlhepp.
I got it, watch out.
Guns drawn, officers cautiously enter the container and come upon Kayla, who had been sexually assaulted by her kidnapper.
Just a girl, just a girl. How are you, honey?
Handcuffed, her neck chained to the wall.
Let's get her out of here.
We're getting bolt cutters, honey.
Working to free her, deputies asked Kayla about her missing boyfriend, 32-year-old Charles Carver.
Do you know where your buddy is?
Charlie?
Yes.
He shot him.
He shot him?
Who did?
Todd Kohlhepp shot Charlie Carver 3 times in the chest, wrapped him in a blue tarp, put him in the bucket of the tractor, locked me down here, and I never seen him again.
Okay.
He says he's dead and buried. He says there's several bodies dead and buried out here.
Sergeant Brandon Letterman was one of the first to reach her.
Knowing that she was living in that condition day in and day night is just horrific. To know that he could do that to another human being.
Investigators later found 3 bodies on Todd Kohlhepp's South Carolina property. He confessed to those murders, along with the shooting deaths of 4 others in 2003. He's now serving life in prison without parole. Following her rescue, Kayla spoke to investigators in an ambulance, mourning the loss of her boyfriend, Charlie. A survivor found and freed.
We're going to step you out, sweet.
To begin healing from her terrifying ordeal. Maya Rodriguez, NBC News.
I want to stop the story here for a moment because I think we owe something. It is very easy for people to become plot devices, a twist, a reveal, a reason for you to keep watching. Charlie Carver, Scott Ponder, Beverly Guy. These were people with families who are still living with the worst thing that ever happened to them. Mary Gillespie spent decades being publicly humiliated. They did not ask to be a mystery. And the woman in the valley, the one we're about to meet, is somebody's daughter. She had a name. 56 years later, we don't even have that much to give her. Hold that with me for the last one. Act 3. The Isdal Woman. November 29th, 1970. A valley called Isdalen near Bergen, Norway. Locals call it Death Valley. A man and his 2 young daughters are hiking, and among the rocks, we still don't know a single true thing about her. Not where she was born, not what she was called, not what she was doing there. She's been burned. Her hands are clenched in a position consistent with the heat, and scattered around her is a scene that has never made sense to anybody who has looked at it. Partially burned clothing, a charred umbrella, water bottles, an almost empty bottle of a local liqueur, and her jewelry and her watch laid out beside the body. Not on her, beside her, placed, almost ceremonially. Traces of petrol at the scene. Whatever happened here, it was not an accident with a campfire. Something was deliberately set alight. Then, investigators started examining her belongings. Every label had been cut out of her clothing. Every one. The manufacturer's markings on her cosmetics had been scraped off. Somebody had systematically removed any trace of where she came from. 3 days later, police matched fingerprints to 2 suitcases left at the Bergen railway station. Inside, more clothing with the labels cut out. Wigs. Glasses with clear, non-prescription lenses. Glasses that exist only to change a face. And a notepad, filled with code. The code turned out to be a travelogue, a record of her movements across Europe through 1970. And when police reconstructed those movements, they found a woman who had been moving through the continent under at least 8 different identities. Names like Vera Schlossneck, Alexia Zarna Herschel. Different names, different claims nationalities. She usually said she was Belgian, sometimes an antiquities dealer. Hotel staff remembered an elegant woman, fluent French, fluent German. She smelled strongly of garlic. She wore a fur hat. Nobody remembered her name. The findings? She died from a combination of carbon monoxide poisoning and an overdose of phenobarbital, a sleeping medication. Between 50 and 70 sleeping pills were in her stomach, and there was soot in her lungs. Soot in the lungs means one thing: she was breathing while she burned. Norwegian police closed the case as a probable self-inflicted death. But look at what that verdict has to absorb. 8 false identities, wigs, coded notebook, petrol. That is not a decision. That is tradecraft. It is the textbook definition of it, the spy. It's been reported that witnesses saw a woman resembling her near missile testing in western Norway. But here's the thing. No intelligence agency has ever claimed her. No declassified file has ever named her. It's plausible. It's unproven. 56 years and we don't know who she was. In 2016, the case was reopened. Isotope analysis of her teeth suggested she grew up near the French-German border in southern Germany. They ran her DNA against Interpol, against commercial databases. Nothing. No match, no name. 56 years later. 56 years of science. Silence. 3 cases, 3 different decades. In Circleville, the system chased a man for 20 years while the letters kept arriving. In South Carolina, the system missed a predator who was publishing what he was going to do. And in a Norwegian valley, the system met someone who had thought about it first. We tell ourselves that the truth comes out, that the pieces fit if you look long enough. These 3 cases are what it looks like when they don't. Keep the light on them. Friction point. Out of those 3, 1 is still fully open. Tell me in the comments which of these 3 you can't shake. Circleville, the container, or the valley. I'm building the next one out of whichever answer wins. Subscribe to stay in the light. Friction point.